Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by co-host Matt Carter, and today we are very excited to say that it is game week, Wolfpack fans. NC State faces South Florida this Thursday, 7:30 p.m. in Carter Finley Stadium. And finally, after months of predictions and forecasting and what's going to happen, finally we'll just get to see the action unfold, and we'll go from there. So today we're going to preview that game, and then afterwards, if there's a little bit of time, we're just going to squeeze out the rest of the off-season 2021 season predictions that we have for you, whether it be win total, statistical leaders. Matt's already predicted a lot of that stuff on the site now, which you can go look at if you go to thewolfpacker.com. Use promo code PACK60 for a free 6-day trial on all of our premium content, news, and analysis. Quick reminder for the listeners at home, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Plus, you can always watch us on our YouTube channel, where you should subscribe to our YouTube channel and give this video a thumbs up. We're roughly about 150 short of our goal of 1,000 subscribers. So Wolfpack fans, please, please, please help us before the season starts. I'm asking you very nicely. Go to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. Even if you just listen in podcast form, you'd be doing us a huge favor by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Okay, Matt, let's talk about some football. I feel like it's been too long, because the last episode that we did, we talked about men's basketball, which was fine, but it was still August, and my brain was in football mode. And so, let's do that. South Florida's coming to town, Matt, and they weren't very good last year, 1-8. NC State was pretty good last year, and we think they're going to be even better this year. This is going to be one of the rare games on NC State's schedule, one of 4 to be exact, that NC State will be at least a double-digit favorite in. So, Matt, is this the same USF team that went 1-8 last year? Correct me if I'm wrong. They may have gone 1-9, but they only had one win, and they weren't very good. Is this the same South Florida team that had such a dismal 2020 season, or is this a new and improved Bulls squad under second-year head coach Jeff Scott?
Well, it has to be improved. It can't be much worse, because they were 1-8, and you kind of run through these scores. You know, sometimes that can be misleading, right? I remember, and ironically, we'll probably be talking about this game shortly, but remember when NC State played North Carolina in the Reggie Gillespie game in 2018? That UNC team obviously was awful. I think they won 2 games all year. But if you go back and look, they lost a boatload of really close football games that year. So they were better than that 2-win or whatever they were, 3 wins that year. If you look at South Florida last year, they were 1-8, legitimately 1-8. I mean, they lost to Notre Dame 52-0. They lost by 3 touchdowns to Cincinnati. Lost by 20 points to East Carolina. Lost by almost 30 points to Tulsa. Lost by 5 touchdowns at Houston. They had a couple of good close calls. Lost by 1 at Memphis. Lost by a couple at Temple. Played Central Florida respectively in the end. Lost by a couple of touchdowns. So, in a game that took over 4 hours, which is mind-boggling. So, by and large, they were a 1-8 team, and it showed on paper. It showed in the results. So they have to be better. Question is it realistic to expect them to be that much better? I mean, they did have a lot where Jeff Scott noted that last year they were at times practicing with about 70 football players, which is a very low number. Most teams have 105 players on the team, and you know, you take out about 10 guys probably because of injuries. Normally you're practicing in the 90s. So they were pretty short-handed, and they added quite a few transfers. I mean, I'm looking at the list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 transfers were brought in out of the portal during the off-season. and all but one of them came from a Power 5 program. So they brought in 9 transfers from the Power 5 level. And so you have to assume they got some of those opt-outs back. You got the transfers that have come in. And a new face at quarterback who's a familiar face to NC State fans. So, yeah, I think realistically they have to be improved. But I'm guessing there's a pretty wide gap between NC State last year and South Florida last year. And I don't think that that's the type of gap that can be overcome.
So the line right now that I'm looking at, Matt, is 16, goes as high as maybe 16 and a half in some places. This opened up as about a 14-point spread. Let me just double check to make sure that I've got the most accurate, up-to-date spreads. But, I mean, does that seem like
it at 18 is what I thought.
Excuse me, I've got it mixed up. It's gone up to 18. You're right, Matt. I should know this. Yeah. But it's gone up to 18. It was at 16. That's right. But I think this one's a tricky one to gamble on the spread. I mean, my gut tells me NC State comes out and plays very confident. You know, you think back to last year, that Wake Forest game where NC State really set the tone for the season with that, you know, good solid win over a good Wake Forest team, which, you know, had a losing record, but, you know, it was probably just as good as NC State last year, if we're being honest with ourselves. In terms of, you know, a couple results go the other way, they have the same record. But NC State had a great rushing attack in that game. They just had a lot of energy, and it just looked like a completely different team than the 2019 team that went 4-8. So part of me thinks that, you know, State takes care of business early in this game, gets in the driver's seat, and then, you know, by mid to late third quarter, you start seeing some of this hefty running back rotation. Maybe Delbert Mims gets a few carries, and State just kind of stymies it away. But I don't know. Maybe South Florida's got some tricks up its sleeves. What do you think about that spread, Matt? Do you think that margin seems right for you?
You know, when it originally came out, I think it was what you said, it was 14 or something like that. It's gone up a few points.
16.
I thought the initial line of it was pretty South Florida friendly, or too tempting of a bet to bet on NC State, and I think they've kind of done a course correction. You know, not to give it away too much, because we'll have our predictions on the site. And if you're a Wolfpack Club member, you get the newsletter on Wednesday previewing the game, and I'll have those predictions, so you'll get the first preview of it. I will have NC State covering that spread. So like I said, this is a team that lost by at least 20 points, 5 times last year. So, you know, and also I think this is an NC State team that's taking a step forward. Yeah, I could see it being a situation where maybe the first half doesn't look as pretty as we want, and then they kind of assert momentum, assert themselves second quarter, third quarter, and then it starts to pull away into a bigger victory type of deal. Because I will say this, I think there are a lot of unknowns with South Florida. Jeff Scott playing the mind games here. He's not releasing the depth chart. So as Dave Doran said, they're going to be chasing some ghosts. Probably don't know a whole lot of what to expect. So there may be the whole what's the expression, chicken in the mouth, or what's the expression called? I forget.
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, something, I don't know. But there's going to be a game of cat and mouse. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Game of cat and mouse. Okay, wrong cliche.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what and I think you're going to see some of that early, where NC State's going to have to take time to identify who's on the field, what are they doing, and then once they kind of got a feel for it, make the adjustments and assert themselves. So, it's a South Florida team that's not devoid of talent, by the way. It's not like they're playing the worst team in college football. It's just a rebuilding program that has some pieces, and probably still a year or two away from being where they want to be.
Yeah, it's got to be a tough game to prepare for if you're Dave Doran in terms of, I mean, obviously not going to be the most difficult opponent you face this year, but, just trying to figure out what Jeff Scott's going to do as, second-year head coach. I mean, it's like, how much do you really take away from last year? They might have shown some things that they're going to do, but this is, a really new team. This team came into camp, I'm reading from the local ABC affiliate down there in Tampa. This team came into camp with 29 transfers. I mean, this is a transplant group. New quarterback. I mean, I just don't know how much you're going to get from that game tape last year. I'm curious to know how much tape he went back and looked at from Clemson and how much Scott's going to run from his time at Clemson. Because to me, that's, if you have a viable product on the field, you're going to use what worked back then. And just for some perspective, Matt, it's about 70% of the money on the spread on that 18-point spread is on NC State. 95% of the tickets are on NC State. That means, what does that mean, Matt? That means the sharp money's on South Florida. Just saying. Now, personally, I don't agree with it. Put
that in layman's terms for everybody.
Put that in layman's terms. Okay, sharp money is the people that make their livelihood on gambling. So they know what they're doing. Most gamblers don't know what they're doing, and they lose money, and that's why the casinos are beautiful and big. So 95% of the tickets, that means a bunch of NC State fans have said, I'm betting on NC State, which means the spread went up from 16 to 18. So now, based on the computer models, they think South Florida has the edge on that. So that's what that means. I wouldn't think anything of it because I still see this as a game where NC State could open it up and win by 3 touchdowns. But something tells me that the South Florida team's not just going to be a pushover like it was last year. I think if I'm looking at anything, I'm looking at an under. Just because I think I'm very bullish on this NC State defense. In fact, I'm more excited about it than this NC State offense. I know it's kind of hard to believe. There's so many cool weapons on this offense. But I've got questions about the offensive line, and I've got questions about the tight end. And I think those two position groups are unproven right now, even though you have an Ike Kwanyu and even though you have a Grant Gibson. What are the rest of the guys going to do? It takes a whole unit to be good up front. But on defense, I feel like there's answers everywhere. Like there's not one defensive position group where you're thinking, I don't know what they're going to be this year. I think all of them are going to be at least good, if not great. So give me NC State, making this a 3-touchdown game maybe midway through the third quarter, and then that defense is going to shut down South Florida, in my opinion, to the point where that under might be enticing. But I don't know. What are you more which side of the ball are you more optimistic about, Matt? The offense or the defense?
In this game, probably both. Because if you look at South Florida defense last year, they allowed 211.9 yards per game rushing, which is a very high total. And they also allowed 229.1 yards passing for 441 yards per game. They did add some transfers. They do have a couple of really nice linebackers. Antonio Greer and Dwayne Boyles, both are all-conference contenders in the American Athletic. And like I said, they've added a lot of transfers, a couple of safeties, 3 corners, a defensive end. So clearly, they're trying to get that secondary fixed. But on paper, statistically, it seems like whatever a team does well, they would do it against South Florida. If they ran well, they would just run on South Florida. If they would throw well, they would just throw on South Florida. It's kind of a good defense, I think, for NC State's offense to start out with. To kind of, we know Dave Doran's buzzword on offense is balance. This is a good game for them to kind of figure out, work on both. So I do think South Florida may have some sneaky weapons on offense. Cade Fortin, the quarterback, he was at UNC. Justin was at that game that he started. He was
Sure.
one of about 97 people in the stands at Kenan Stadium that day. 49 of them, I think, were NC State fans. The rest were the UNC band, if I recall it correctly.
There was, I would say, a solid
And I would say
5,000, and 4,700 were NC State fans.
yeah, and it was a miserable day. Even Ryan Finley was struggling to throw the football. And unfortunately, NC State had Reggie Gillespie, who was built for that kind of game, and he ran for 5 touchdowns and I think 125 yards and won the game for NC State. But Cade Fortin actually played pretty well that day, considering the circumstances. Just his second career start, his first full game. He hadn't played in a while, coming off an injury, true freshman, rivalry game. He held up well. I told Justin, I remember thinking after that game, UNC got a couple pieces here in the backfield that they can build on in Cade Fortin and a running back named Javonte Williams. They both look pretty good. Now, I didn't know Sam Howell was going to come in and be a future NFL quarterback and, hyped up to be a Heisman Trophy candidate. And that's the only reason why Cade Fortin is not the starting quarterback at UNC right now. Sam Howell came in and Mac Brown made the correct decision to go with him. So Cade Fortin ended up transferring to South Florida. Had some injuries last year, so he wasn't the starter last year, but he won the job in preseason camp. And, he was well regarded coming out of high school. So they potentially have a quarterback. The running back they got is the guy that I know Phil Steele thinks can be one of those third, fourth team all-conference type of guys. They had a receiver that had a big game against Central Florida, Bryce Miller. Had 121 yards and 2 touchdowns against Central Florida in the last game of the year. He's back. So if you look at their offensive line, Phil still has 2 guys on his 4th team, and Athlon has a 3rd guy on their 3rd team. So they got some linemen that, again, not maybe upper echelon, but kind of borderline all-conference guys. So that's kind of a rundown. So you asked me which side I might feel better. I think there might be a little bit of sneakiness to South Florida's offense coming into this game to rebuild.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. Now, this, like you were mentioning, Matt, this defense, I think that this South Florida's defense does present a nice, easy, transitionary pop quiz for NC State. I mean, it's not like they're going to face a juggernaut in Mississippi State in week 2, NC State, but it's still an SEC defense. You're still going to face SEC quality defenders. So that's going to be a challenge, right? And you just want to build some confidence in week 1, I think. I think that's the key for this NC State team. They got to win this game. They got to win it handedly because they just need some confidence going into game 2. Win that game down in Starkville, then you got even more confidence for the next big one that comes up. We're not going to go that far ahead yet. But a couple stats to keep in mind about this Bulls defense that I think should have NC State fans pretty excited. USF ranked 94th nationally in total defense. They ranked 106th in rushing defense. They ranked 125th in team sacks, averaged just 0.78 per game. So have to think from the offensive line perspective. You look at NC State's question marks on offense. Should be a nice transitionary period for them to, protect Devin Leary. Important goal this year. And 120th and third down conversion percentage, which if you're thinking back to night game season openers, you just have to think back to last year and look at that NC State Wake Forest game and say, NC State probably would have won that game by about at least 10 or 14 points if they could have stopped Wake Forest about, just a few more times on third down. I mean, it seemed like every single time the Demon Deacons had a third down opportunity, NC State was allowing a 10 to 15 yard play. So, those numbers. Go ahead.
Like I said, don't forget the crucial pick 6 twice NC State jumped out to 2-touchdown leads, and both times Wake Forest came back, and there was a big pick six that Bailey Hockman threw that allowed Wake Forest to get that second. I believe it was the second time they came back from 14 down to get back in the game. You mentioned the sacks total. This is mind-boggling when you think about it, by the way, not to interrupt you too much. But
no, take it.
South Florida had 7 sacks last year and 42 tackles for loss. I'm going to take back what I said about the South Florida offensive line. It better have gotten a lot better. South Florida's offensive line, 30 sacks allowed. Remember, South Florida had 7 sacks as a team. They allowed 30 sacks. So that's over 4 times as many sacks. Remember, South Florida had 42 tackles for loss last year. Opponents had 81 tackles for loss on South Florida last year. I thought that was 9 a game that they allowed, and over 3 sacks a game that they allowed. So this is a game where you look at the line of scrimmage in particular, you're thinking that's where NC State should have the big advantage on both sides of the football this game.
That kind of leads me into I don't know if it's a bold prediction, but it is a prediction for this game on Thursday, Matt. I was going to say that I think Corey Durden's going to have at least 2 sacks on Thursday. I feel like he's going to be a man on a mission. Former Florida guy, USF, there might be some connections on that team. Who knows? But the level of competition that he's going to be going up against, I feel like he's just going to play like a bat out of hell just because, of everything that happened the past year. He's transferred. He's got to prove himself. Kind of like the Daniel Joseph game last year. He was the new guy. And Daniel Joseph, one of his best games was that Wake Forest game. So, I don't know. Yeah. There's something about a defensive lineman where it's like their motivation is just 50% of how good they're going to play. Not that they're less motivated for any other game, but I feel like there's just because of how everything unfolded last year, this excitement going into this season seems very unique. It's hard to remember a time where it seems like fans, players, coaches, just the collection of the college football community has been this excited about a season opener. Do you kind of feel that way, Matt?
For NC State?
For NC State or just in general. Like, I feel like there's just a yearning to get back to a normal college football season. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of curiosity of what it's going to be like, too. What kind of fan attendance can be expected at these games? There's no denying that there is still COVID out there. There's still the Delta variant is still running pretty hot right now. So how much will that impact the season? Are they going to be able to avoid disruptions and interruptions and have normalcy? So I think there's a lot of excitement, but also a little bit of walking on eggshells. Like nobody wants to jinx it. Nobody wants to say, yes, we're completely back at college football as you know it. Kind of like, think so. It looks right. It sounds right. Let's just hope it holds up. And we don't want to jump the gun, but I do think there's a lot of excitement. There's certainly excitement at NC State. You can tell me what your prediction is, but I went 8-4, 5-3 in the ACC, and I think I sent a great deal of disappointment with those records. So, are you about to disappoint them too, Justin?
This is tricky. So much of it depends on how good Devin Leary is. So much, and how good the offensive line is. I don't have questions about the wide receiver core. I don't have questions about the running backs. I don't have questions about the defense. I think this is going to be a top 3 defense in the league. It's not going to be the best, but it's going to be a top 3 defense in the league with the best linebackers in the league. And I think the special teams will be even better this year because they were okay last year, but I feel like those 2 guys are some really specialists, and I think they'll have a better year this year. Trenton Gill and Chris Dunn. I I'm still sticking with 8-4 for now. My losses are.
No more for now. Now season starts.
Oh yeah, but if they if they beat Mississippi State and then they look so good, obviously our predictions have to change,
Now
right?
you can't change your prediction after a couple games into the year.
Look, this is on the record. Everybody knows this is my preseason prediction, but if you're midway through right, like last year, remember when Devin Leary went down, and if somebody would have come out when Devin Leary was hurt and said NC State's going to finish the season 8-3, you'd be like, really? Okay. So, anyways, there's a lot of context to the season. A lot can happen. Injuries can happen. Games can go the other way. Who knows? But yeah, I like 8-4. I just like I don't agree on the losses that you have. I think State will beat Mississippi State. I think this team.
You got them 4-4 in the. You got them 4-4 in the ACC.
You know what? No, I'm going 9-3. I'm going 9-3 because I just think they'll go. I think they'll go 5-3 in the conference, and I think they will sweep this non-conference schedule. I mean, you brought up some really good points about they've only beaten they've only beaten an SEC opponent twice in 20 plus years. That's crazy, but I still think this NC State team's better than Mississippi State. Especially because I think defensively, NC State could present some challenges for Mississippi State. I feel like Mississippi State has to win a gunfight. And I still think this team is talented enough to knock off one of those big 3 games in Miami on the road or Clemson and Carolina at home. I know in your story on thewolfpacker.com, you had NC State beating North Carolina, but you had NC State losing to Mississippi State, Clemson, Wake Forest, and Miami, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I agree with you on the Wake Forest. I feel like there's one or two, the ACC to me is good enough this year where a Boston College or a Wake Forest or even a Florida State on the road could really sneak up on NC State, and that's going to be a game that NC State goes into as a favorite, not a huge favorite, but a favorite, and then loses. That happens. I don't think this is a team that can be so perfect that it goes 11-1 or something like that. But I do think there's an upset coming this year. I don't know if it's Clemson. I don't know if it's North Carolina. Maybe Miami, but I think that one's a little bit tougher because it's on the road. Either way, I think if NC State can go 1-2 in those big games, and they can take care of business for the most part in the other games. Maybe, look, we're still talking about NC State, so Winston-Salem might be a challenge. But if they can go 9-3 and they win one of those big games, that's one hell of a season. So yeah, I'm changing it to 9-3 just because I feel confidently that they will sweep the non-conference slate, and I feel confidently that they will finish with a winning record in the ACC. So I'm going 9-3.
All right. There you have it. At the official Justin Williams. I was tempted to go 9-3, to be honest with you. The Mississippi State, the collection of games between Mississippi State, Boston College, and Wake Forest, really, to me, is how do you see them going in those 3 games will tell you how do you see the season going. You maybe even throw Florida State on the road there. And then you had the big 3, Miami on the road, UNC, Clemson at home. Can you take one of those? That's where your predictions are going to vary. I will say this, too. I know a lot of people on the board point out, this is Dave Doran's deepest team, most talented team. And they may be right about all that. I'm guaranteeing you right now, there's some people at Wake Forest around that program saying this is one of their best teams. I guarantee you at Boston College, they're saying this is one of their best teams in a long time. They're definitely saying that in Chapel Hill. They're saying that down in Miami. I'm sure people at Mississippi State are saying, yeah, we got a lot of guys back from last year's team. They're going to be a whole lot better in year 2 under Mike Lee. It's just the nature of college football this year. So I can't preach it loud enough to fans out there. Don't be in the vacuum of NC State so much that you're not able to see that there are a lot of other teams in a very similar boat of NC State where they've got pretty much everything coming back and high expectations. So,
You know where they're not
you know,
saying it? You know where they're not saying it? Clemson. That's what
Clemson,
intrigues me about this year.
Yeah, but the Clemson that's saying, I mean, here's the dynamic of Clemson. If they lose the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, and people think the new quarterback can be all ACC quarterback.
Of course.
And that's the dynamic they're at, where, they lost a lot, but everybody knows they're back up to they're at Alabama level right now.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. No doubt. Clemson's a great team. Like, they're a top 5 team, obviously. I'm just saying, quarterback's not the concern for me with the Tigers. It's who else do they have on offense? The defense is going to be great. Who else? You think about Clemson, you think about all these great skill players that they've had. You know, I don't see. And that's one question mark that I have for NC State. It's like, who's the Bradley Chubb on this team? Who's the Kelvin Harmon on this team? Who's the Jalen Samuels on this team? You know, are there those type of quality dudes on this team? I think Peyton Wilson is. I think Zonovan Knight is. We'll see about the rest.
Yeah.
Icky, maybe, but maybe a little bit more consistency needed.
Yeah.
So
it's gonna be fun. It's fun to finally get to see it on the field and see if we can get some of those questions answered sooner rather than later. I also say this too. It takes 3 weeks to figure out college football. So I know a lot of people get excited about week 1 and week 2 results. It takes 3 to 4 weeks to get excited about college football. Case in point, last year, Miami was a great example. Everybody got on the Miami Hurricanes bandwagon because they beat an overrated Louisville team in week 1 or 2 or something of that effect. In hindsight, we know that Louisville stunk last year, right? So it takes a few weeks to figure it out. Don't overreact to week 1 or week 2. You know, by first weekend in October, you should have a good idea of what the season looks like and where things stand.
Let's give the audience one bold prediction each before we tune off here, Matt. I don't know if you have one ready to go. If you don't, I can say mine first. One bold prediction.
For the season or for
anything? Just for the season. For the season.
I've been I made a bold prediction that let's see, I have Jonathan Knight going for 1,000 yards. Yeah, my boldest prediction was probably Thayer Thomas will lead the team in receptions. Not receiving yards, but receptions.
I mean, to me, saying Bam Knight's going to have 1,000 rushing yards is a bolder prediction. Like, Thayer Thomas gets receptions. That's what he does. Okay, fair enough. Bold enough, Matt. And I think you're going to be right on one of those, by the way, and it's not the one you'd expect. I just got a sense that this is the year that State's going to beat Clemson. I feel if there's a time that it's going to happen, if there is a time that the Tigers will be dethroned by NC State specifically. Now, eventually, Clemson will be dethroned. But if this year, is it going to be NC State? If it is, it has to be this year because State's got them at home. They got them early. You got to, I get that the quarterback is phenomenal. I get that. But he's still young. He's not tested yet. That's going to be his first true road test in the ACC. I'm not thinking about that game at Notre Dame last year. That was a half capacity game at best. I don't know. I just circled that game for if NC State wins those first 3 games, they got to take care of business. And I also think Clemson has to take care of business against Georgia, right? Because if Georgia beats Clemson in week 1, then you're going to get an angry Clemson team, and you don't want that. You want to catch Clemson off guard in Raleigh. That's right. So that's my bold prediction. It would be Dorn's first win over Clemson, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Dave Doran will get his first win over Clemson this year. That's my bold prediction. We'll see. That'd be cool. Now, look,
Yeah,
I don't know how fans would appreciate if both of my predictions go the right way, because if State beats Clemson and they still go 9-3, then I think fans will still be mad somehow. But we will see. It'd be very NC State. So that was fun, Matt. Can't wait for the action to unfold. Thursday, 7:30 p.m. You will be there in Carter Finley Stadium. I will be tuning in from my living room at 4:30 p.m. here. But we will have more coverage for you after the game, so stay tuned for that. And a quick reminder for everybody at home, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Plus, you can always watch us on our YouTube channel, where you should subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the football season starts. We got 2 more days. Wolfpack fans, help us out. Smash that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. If you want to follow us on social media, you can follow our main account at the Wolfpacker on Twitter. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will. And you can give us a like on Facebook, NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. So for Matt Carter, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.